The Biden administration proposes a new rule that could affect your credit report. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And what about the timing? I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, the Biden administration has basically proposed this rule through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that says that medical debt cannot be considered in credit reports. And so your credit score cannot be affected by medical debt. And this is an interesting idea, Bill Whittle, because there are two elements to this story. And I'm going to give you the first one and Steve the second one. But of course, this is your show. So if you feel like you have to jump in later, you can do that. But it turns out that something like 2 in 5 Americans have medical debt. It can damage your credit score, which makes everything else in life more difficult. It makes it more difficult to buy a house, to get a car, and all that kind of stuff. And so the Biden administration wants to intervene and say they want to ban the practice of including medical debt in credit scores. And medical debt is a special kind of debt, it occurs to me. Bill, the story that I read didn't say this, but I thought, if I run up a big charge on my credit card, these are largely elective purchases. If I go out and buy a bunch of toys or various kinds of entertainment and run up $20,000 on a credit card, that was my choice. But a lot of times, medical debt is not my choice. If I suddenly have to go in for surgery and that costs $20,000, that's a whole different world. And so do you think it makes some sense? Oh, and I'll give you one more little fact here. According to the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a guy whose name is Rohit Chopra, that they found in studies that people with medical debt are not necessarily less likely to pay down other kinds of debt. So their research is basically showing that having a lot of medical debt is not necessarily deleterious to your credit rating in the sense that it's just the medical debts that's the problem. You tend to keep current on other things. Do you think it's reasonable for any administration to step in and say, look, no more counting medical debt toward credit scores?
Well, first of all, I've not heard the other side of the argument, so let me just get that out.
Well, I'm trying to blindside you with this. Go ahead.
No. It's always just important to understand that there could be and possibly is and likely is another entire side of the argument. But having heard what you've said, and just listening to it from a sheer rational, logical, common sense point of view, this actually does make a lot of sense to me. The law has provisions for force majeure and acts of God, things that are beyond your control, that it provides immunity to a cruise ship or whatever the case may be. If they get struck by a meteorite or something, they're not liable. And you're right. Medical debt is non-voluntary spending. It's not a reflection of look. Your credit report and your credit score is designed for lenders to determine essentially how responsible you are. Are you the kind of person? Just really pretty much it. It's your personal responsibility rating, and if you are one of those extraordinarily responsible people who gets hit by circumstances beyond your control, as you mentioned, you can just go out and blow the thing on a vacation or whatever. Yes, that actually makes sense to me. It's a variation on some level of what the Victorians called the deserving poor, where the idea that if you were just destitute or poor, they'd either throw you in prison or tell you to get a job. Or if you were a single mom or something, you divorced or something. But if you were a war widow and you've got 9 kids and your husband was killed on a British battlefield someplace, you were considered to be the deserving poor. It was not your fault. You had no moral defect there that caused this. So yeah, I kind of think there's something to this. The only thing, it's not really directly related to this, but one of the things I've felt, having been on both sides of credit reports over the years, is that I think that people would actually take their credit scores more seriously and improve their credit scores if the tail wasn't so long. Yeah. I really actually believe that. I mean, every now and then, over the years, I had a payment or a late payment. It's like, this is going to follow you around for 7 years. It's like, well, if it's going to follow me around for 7 years, then to hell with it. 7 years, I just, how about it follows me around for 1 year or 2 years? And related to what you were saying too, I think I've heard that, for example, guys that are writing auto loans, and they'll do anything to write a loan to get the car off the lot. But they will sometimes look at your car payment history, and if it's different than your other payment history, in other words, if you've got a sketchy credit report but your car payments are always made on time, then they can sometimes use that as a factor as well. So yeah, this makes sense to me. Credit is not a one-size-fits-all thing in terms of what you spent your money on.
So, Stephen Green, to fill in some more details, about 15 million Americans have some $49 billion in medical debt, according to this story that ABC News published that is apparently hampering their credit scores. If this proposal from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau goes through, it will allow 22,000 more people each year to get approved for what they call a safe mortgage. I'm assuming that means one at a reasonable interest rate. That didn't strike me as a tremendously large number across the country, that, if you spread that out over 50 states. But what I thought was interesting, Steve, and was pretty far down in the story, is that Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian have already excluded medical debt from their credit scoring algorithms, and FICO and VantageScore have reduced the impact of credit scores already. And this suddenly started going from seeming like just a sensible thing and finally some actual use for the I can't even say it, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to suddenly seeming like a pre-election thing that makes it look like the Biden administration is doing something when in fact they're bringing up the rear of the parade. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds from what you just said to me like they're just piggybacking on something the private industry is already doing. And wow, isn't that a lot of federal government in a nutshell? I got to confess to my own personal bias here. When you introduced the story at the beginning of the segment, my first instinct was, well, Biden wants to do something that's probably wrong. I'll wait before he even told me what it was.
No, I almost commented on that too.
Yeah.
I hate it because Biden suggested it. No, it actually sounds reasonable.
Yeah, if I saw Biden giving a puppy a treat, I would wonder if the puppy was somehow connected to the CCP and there was money involved. This is how jaded this man has made me over the last few years. That said, medical debt's a serious thing, and this seems like a worthy effort, despite my bias. It seems like a worthy effort, a worthy goal, even if, again, it's something Washington is just piggybacking on that's already happening. That said, there is something we can do about medical debt because everything is too expensive. I saw a story on Twitter today, and I might not have believed it, except they posted the receipt. Somebody's 5-year-old son, 4-year-old son was in severe abdominal pain, and mom and dad were scared to death that this was appendicitis because, the boy's, pointing here, this is where it hurts, and, probably does. So they take him to the ER. They've got no other choice because the kid's in so much pain, and it's like in that spot. And within 5 minutes of seeing, I can't remember if it was the doctor or the nurse. I don't even think the doctor had shown up yet. The young child released an impressive burp. One of these huge burps that just goes on. Problem solved. No appendicitis. The poor kid was just backed up with some serious gas and go home. Go on your way. Happy child. No need for they didn't even have to give him an aspirin, which, costs $100 in the ER. The bill came out to over $4,100.
Oh, dear Lord.
Holy cow.
No medical treatment was given. They might have been seen by one professional, maybe not even a doctor.
Oh, my God.
$4,100 for this. And the reason is Washington has turned the medical industry into a cartel. There's no better way to describe it. Your physician that you went to see once a year, or when you strained your back or whatever, was a small business owner. Obamacare killed all that because nobody can afford all the paperwork that was a part of the laws. So everybody's been all these small businesses have been herded together into these medical centers that are constantly changing ownership. I've been going to the exact same place for probably 12 years now, and they've changed names 4 times, and I've gotten 3 different doctors because it's just another.
It's not medicine.
Yeah, it's just another big business. And the hospital's the same thing. It is a cartel, or maybe I should say it's a set of cartels, sort of interlayered, and the insurance companies don't give a damn. They'll do whatever because they're getting the huge premiums, and we are getting sucked dry on everything. And it's thanks to government. So if Joe Biden really wants to do something about medical debt, he could start by getting one of his pals in Congress to introduce legislation to repeal Obamacare. But no, he'll just piggyback on something that the private industry is already doing to try and make himself look good, when in fact everything is just going to cost more and more and more.
I have three thoughts on this. Number one, and this fact I withheld from you, but the story said that the announcement was going to be made by the CFPB chairman as well as Vice President Kamala Harris. And I thought, well, I'm sure that this was high on her list in her portfolio of responsibilities that she needs to be involved in this. So I came in a little skeptical when I saw that Vice President Harris was prominently featured in this story. I'm wondering if we're being prepared for her eventual presidency by making it look like she's got responsibilities. That was number one. Number two, it occurs to me that if you owe a hospital, for example, a lot of money, whatever you do, don't pay that off with a credit card. It's better to owe the hospital. Because at some point when they achieve this, the medical debt is not that the hospital holds is not going to affect you. But if you paid it off with your MasterCard, then and you were having trouble paying your MasterCard, then you'd have a horse of a different color there. And then finally, we got a survey this week at my other employer that from the insurance company that we're supposed to be part of. And they wanted to know what we thought of their service. Now, I didn't actually read the email, but this was announced in a meeting. And I thought, well, I should respond to the email and go, actually, I don't know what I think of your service because as far as I can tell now, the cost of the deductible and out-of-pocket expenses of getting any kind of medical procedure is greater than what it used to be to just get the medical procedure and pay cash for it. So I haven't actually used your service all that much, if at all, because I can't afford the deductible and the out-of-pocket costs of using this so-called boon to humanity that's called insurance. So it's just like a lot of things, the fact that you can get a low-interest loan to go to college drives up the cost of education, and the fact that you can buy insurance to cover some medical procedures drives up the cost of medical procedures, and everything agitates toward increasing the cost of that. I tend to agree with the Biden administration thought, anyway, that it doesn't, medical debt shouldn't be included along with normal consumer debt when it comes to calculating credit scores. On the other hand, I see this as a wholly craven political move in a run-up to an election to announce that basically we're going to ban something that the whole industry seems to have been moving in the direction of anyway, including most of the major players like Experian and FICO and TransUnion. And so to try to get out in front of that parade at this late hour and make it look like you're doing something sweet for the American public in the run-up to the election, I just think is just short of despicable. And at the very least, it's just kind of pathetic. The end result, I think, will be a positive one, but not because of the legislation, because the industry realizes they're looking at the same studies that the government is looking at, and they realize that if you're not paying your medical debt down quickly, it's not because you're irresponsible, it's just because you weren't planning to have, your lung removed. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.